Allie with Potomac Beads. Join me in creating these great Kentucky earrings, which are kind of an ode to the horse races and the beautiful bouquets that they get put on them. They encapsulate a beautiful oval, and you learn some easy netting techniques and a little picot trim. If you need any supplies, check the links below to shop with us online. So to get started with our Kentucky earrings, and I named them that because they remind me of a floral bouquet that goes around the neck of a horse when they win. And I have 11 OC beads, 15 OC beads. Those are both in the Crystal Labrador Fool in the Miyuki brand. I have my crystal Nugget oval here, and the Nugget ovals that I'm using are in the purple flare color. And then also some Potomac crystal rounds in the metallic purple iris. We're going to be building this nice form, which then looks like it's prong set around the oval. To begin, I have a size 11 English beading needle pony brand, and I have about 3 feet of beading thread. On that beading thread, I put a stop bead, and then a collection of 12 of my 2mm Potomac crystal rounds, followed by one 11-0. You want to make sure that when you start out with your crystal round, you end with an 11 OC bead. We're going to pull that into a circle by going back through the crystal, 11, crystal, 11, crystal. So I'm coming out the third crystal, and that's just going to round this set out. Now when I use this stop bead, I do want it to sit just off a little bit because I don't want it super tight toward the project. What we're going to do now is a collection of 3 11-0 seed beads. And once you put on the 3 11-0 seed beads, I want you to go back through the crystal that your thread is currently coming out of, into the 11-0 that's after it, and then into the next crystal. That's going to decorate the exterior of that crystal there. And just put a little kind of crystal picot trim there at the top. Coming out the next crystal, again, repeat 1, 2, and 3 of your 11 OC beads. So back through the crystal that your thread is coming out of, as well as the 11-0 and the next crystal. Now I've done 2 of these. I have 10 more to go around the form, adding in that exterior little point around this outer ring. As you go around the exterior, and I'm adding my last of my seed beads in, I'm going to go through that same crystal, the 11-0 that's after, and then through the next crystal that already has the seed beads on top. Coming out there, I'm going to do something that seems a little funky. I'm going to add one more 11-0 seed bead in between each one of my crystals. So it's going to sit toward the top, and you want to keep it toward the top. You're going to add one 11-0 and then sew through the next crystal in line. Again, make sure to keep that kind of toward the top, because we're going to come back and catch on to all of these secondary 11-0 seed beads. So once again, add an 11-0, skip over the 11-0 that's already there, and sew through the crystal that's next in line, and just that crystal that's next in line. I want to sew through some of the beads. If you notice also as you're doing it that your thread gets a little twisted, make sure to untwist that and make sure that 11-0 sits right on top of the previous 11-0 underneath. I have 2 done, 10 more to go, and then I'm going to make sure that I'm coming out of that first 11-0 as we get ready then to add in some 15s. Once you put on all your 11-0 seed beads in between those crystal rounds, again, I want you to make sure you're coming out through that first one that you added. As you come out through that first one that you added, we're going to bend those 11-0 seed beads toward the interior of our crystal wreath here. And I want you to add 2 15-0 seed beads rather, between each one of the 11s. So you're going to add 2 15s, sew through the next 11, and that'll pour that toward the center of the design. Again, 2 15s get added, sew through the next 11-0 that's there, and make sure that you're sewing through that secondary 11-0, the one that does not have any other beads sewn through. And you're going to get that kind of nice framing effect. Again, 2 15s onto the next independent 11-0 seed bead. So as you gather them all up, you're going to notice the points kind of start to point out more, and those 11-0s that we just added start to roll in toward the center. As I'm adding in my last 2 15-0 seed beads, I'm going to go through my first 11-0 as well as through my first two 15s and my second 11-0 there. That's going to just kind of pull it a little bit tighter. And you can see that open frame now. It sits a little bit higher up than the original ring. From here, coming out this 11-0 seed bead, I'm going to grab my crystal oval. A 12mm round bead would work kind of the same. And what I'm going to do is, coming out of that 11-0 seed bead, I'm putting my crystal on. I'm going to go down to the 11-0 seed bead that sits opposite, because I have an even number of crystals, and sew through the 11-0 seed bead that's there from the right hand side, since that's the side I'm coming out of at the top, over to the left, then back up through the crystal, give a nice tight pull, and then also back through that same 11-0 seed bead that my thread is coming out of from the left over toward the right hand side. That way it sits nice and centered along the piece. From here, I'm going to create and set prongs that are going to look like they're holding in that oval as we go. To do so, I want you to go through the first two 15s after that 11-0 seed bead, and when you're exiting through those first two 15s, you're going to pick up another 15. That 15 is going to sit in front of the 11, and you're going to sew through the next two 15s. That's what gets that prong style look as you pull it in towards the center. I'm going to repeat this on the side 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times on both the left and the right. I'm going to skip the one in the middle and sew directly from 15-0s to 15-0s to pull it into my oval shape. If you have a round bead in here that you want to use, you'll add the 15-0 in that place. So I'm going to continue adding a 15-0, then sewing through the two 15-0s that are next in line. Add a 15-0 through the next two in line. And again, this just kind of gets that prong setting. If you want it to look very open, you don't have to do this step. Going in and adding my fourth one now. And as I add the fourth one, then I have one more set to add. And then I'll sew directly through my two beads here. Those go on. That was number 4. And again, as I'm doing this, I'm pulling a little bit on my thread to get some additional tension. Never pull on your needle, because that is going to fray the thread that is in the needle currently, in the eye of the needle. When I sew through the bottom here, so I'm going right near the bottom of the oval, I have my last 15-0 that I'm getting on there, and I'm pushing it toward the center of the project. Instead of adding a 15-0 here to get that oval shape, I'm going right over to my next set of 15s. Once I'm there, I want to again, see how you see a little bit of thread there? I'm going to pull a nice tight pull to get that into the oval shape. Continue now up the sides, going ahead and adding in 5 more of your 15s between each of the two 15s that are already there. That again is going to pull this in more towards the center and get that prong effect that you're looking at. From here then, when I get to the top, I want to make sure I'm sewing, again, just like the bottom, straight through that 15-0 section that connects at the top where you see the thread. Once you're through those 15s, coming out right before that first 15 that you added, you see that nice prong setting that you get. It also keeps your oval from flipping, and it has it from kind of turning sideways. So 2 benefits there. Coming out the 15s, I want to go through the 11-0 that's right after them. So I'm going to kind of down step into that 11-0 that's right there. And then once I'm through that 11-0 that's right there, I'm going to reverse the thread once again and go through the 11-0 that sits between the crystals below. From here, I'm going to go through that crystal below, so I'm going to flip it to the back so you can see a little bit better. I'm going to go through the crystal that sits next to the 11 and out, just through that crystal. And once you're through that crystal, really wants to go through the 11-0 too. Once you're through just that crystal there, we can usually kind of sew on an angle to do it. We're going to go back through the 11-0s that sit at the point of the piece. So the 11 sit around the point here, and they kind of look like they're a little bit of like a ribbon or kind of bone. We are going to make them sit perfectly. To do so, I'm going to go through those 3 15s that sit along the exterior. Remember, to the back of the pendant now, or the back of the earrings now, we're going to go along those 11s that sit on the exterior. I'm going through just the first seed bead on that first top section. I'm going to keep my thread to the back, skip over always the bead that sits in the middle of that picot trim. That's going to pull that forward more. So from bead 1 over to bead number 3, keeping your thread toward the back here, meaning that seed bead, that 11 is going to pop toward the front a tiny bit. Once you pull that, go ahead and add 1 15 and sew through the next picot trim set, through bead number 1 and out, through bead number 3, skipping over bead number 2 and out. Again, make sure that thread stays to the back of the design. If it goes towards the front, not a huge deal, but it's just going to make for a nicer look if you kind of push it toward the back. Give a tight little pull, and that pops that center bead up. Again, continue now with a 15 seed bead on through bead number 1 of that set of 3 picot trim. Skip over bead number 2, keeping the thread toward the back, sew through bead number 3. Again, add a 15, and you're going to continue this the whole way around the earring. What that's going to do is lay this, you can already see the look of how it's taking it from that kind of unevenness to a nice straight line with the 11 peaking right above the crystal. Once you're back to the beginning here, you can see all those nice points and that oval really kind of taking shape. And I'm coming through my design, and I'm back out through my first 11 seed bead here. And rather than continuing on, which you can do, I want to get back to that center 15 that sits right above the crystal line. You don't have to do that, but because the crystal has a hole and you see a little bit of a line in the center, it would drive me crazy if that line was not in the middle of my ear wire when I'm wearing it. Now you can be done at this point and add a regular wire guard on and a regular ear wire. I'm making it a little fancy, adding one of these flower posts. So I'm adding the flower post. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my design here, and I'm coming through that first 11. I'm going to go through that second or the third 11 right there in line. So I'm sneaking behind that first line of my seed bead, just like I did. I'm going to then go through my bead that sits right below it, which is my crystal bead there, and get back toward this center. Once you're out toward the center here of the piece, you can see I kind of flip from front to back. I'm going to take my needle and thread through the 11 that sits right after the crystal. And then coming out through the top here, I'm going to step up through the 15 that sits right above it. Coming out that 15, here's where it's a little bit tricky. Number one, you want to make sure that your ear wire is sitting in the correct direction, because you don't want to have it that the ear wire is facing backward and that you can see that crystal ring rather than this nice little webbing effect around it. So coming out, I want to go through my ear wire, and I'm going through from the back toward the front. Coming out that 15 on the left hand side, I'm going to sew through the right hand side. Now I want to make sure that this sits even. So to do so, see how it's kind of sitting on the side there? I want to keep it the way that it is. And this time, instead of sewing through from the front, I'm going to go into the back. And now when I get to the front, I'm going to make sure that my thread goes in the opposite way to that 15. So it's coming out the left-hand side there, or right-hand side rather. I'm going to go into the left. What that's going to do is make the thread sit so that's kind of equal right in the middle. See how it kind of crosses there then? That makes it so you make sure that the thread's going in one way and out the other way for the ear wire. From here, I'm going to go into the back of the ear wire. Add one more of my crystal here, just to decorate that loop. This is optional. And then I'm going to sew back through the loop of the ear wire from the front toward the back. Give a nice tight pull so that way most of the thread gets hidden inside and you don't see. And now looking to the back here, I'm going to go down through that 15-0 one more time. And then all I'm going to do is sew down through the 11-0, crystal 11-0 all the way back to tie off my thread to complete my elegant Kentucky earrings. And once you get to the back here too, you can see there's that thread tie off and it'll sit right and perfectly on your earring as you create the nice knot on the back. Thanks so much for joining me in creating these Kentucky earrings. They really are a fun kind of showstopper with a lot of glitz and glam. If you do need any materials, make sure to check out those links below to shop with us online. Hopefully you can utilize this pattern and ideas in many different ways, using some 10 or 12 millimeter rounds, or even shrinking the amount of the original circle. Keep in mind you can also comment below any of those changes, additions, or any questions that you may have. It really helps to build up this amazing beading community. As always, if you do need any materials, check those links below, and then also show off your creations and your Kentucky earrings in our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. If you haven't already yet, give a little thumbs up as well as subscribe so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. Enjoying your new fancy Kentucky earrings.